It's showtime!
Character popularity. We all have a good idea of who actually is or isn't popular in this game. Like, for example, we all know that Xin Yan is one of the most popular characters in the game, with the one person on this planet who actually mains her. In all seriousness, we know she's not that popular. We know characters like Hu Tao are extremely popular. After all, browsing the internet in Genshin-related spaces is like playing Five Nights at Freddy's with Hu Tao fan art. But aside from the obvious ones, we don't know where a lot of the characters land, at least I don't think a lot of people know. And before you see the results of this video, maybe put down in the comments who you think the most popular and least popular character is, or characters if you want to list like maybe 3 or 5 or whatever. What I wanted to do was create a way that I could gauge a character's popularity in an objective manner based off of a few metrics. There are a handful of tools online that can be used to potentially gauge a character's popularity. For starters, there's banner sales, and the main problem with that is there's double banners, and you can't exactly tell where the sales are coming from unless Yoimi is on the banner, then you know it's not coming from her. There are sites where you can see some breakdowns for the 5 stars, but that's not the only issue. 4 stars are a massive problem because you may want one of the 3, but nobody can tell what you're rolling for. You just get whatever you get. 20 barbers. For those reasons, banner sales are out. They are not a metric. Next up, some people might say Spiral Abyss statistics. Well, that is, geez, you know, we've had like 44 Spiral Abyss at this point, somewhere around there. I'm not going to try to confirm the exact number, but it is an absurd amount. And for me to go through every single one and take down the usage statistics of every single character in every abyss, no, I'm not even entertaining the idea of doing that. That sounds, no. I don't even think it's that good of an indicator of popularity anyway. It's more of meta viability and just use rates. One metric I had intended to use but didn't because of practicality were Ziox guides, but since Ziox hasn't made a guide for every single character, it became a little impractical to use, so I just kind of scrapped that idea. But it really would have been nice to have that because it's like meta viability, but it's also just people being interested in building the character and optimizing them, so it would have been a lot better than the Abyss in my opinion. Before I go over the categories individually and why I picked them and the problems that come along with them, let me just explain the overall method of how I'm going to determine each character's popularity. Each category, every single character except Aloy will get a score from 1 to 63. Then at the end, I will add up their total score and that will be their score. The lower, the better. That ends up with 5 being the best score a character could possibly get, with 315 being the lowest if they got ranked the worst in every category. The first metric being used is going to be the total number of members in each character's main Reddit. Now, in the process of going to every single Reddit for every character, I found something a little bit interesting. The Diona mains Reddit has seemingly just been nuked. It doesn't necessarily mean things have been deleted, it's just a barren wasteland. I'm a little bit afraid to ask what went on here to cause this, but I don't even want to know. But I do kind of want to know. If you're a part of this community and you know what the heck happened, you know, maybe let us know in the comments, because it's a weird thing to see and I only saw it in this one case. Regardless, it does seem that attempts have been made to resurrect the Diona mains Reddit or make a new one that is actually active, but to no success, which means the member count for this one is sadly going to be the one that's counted, but given Diona's other popularity and my other metrics, it still checks out. In my searches through the various mains Reddits, there were sometimes seemingly dueling subreddits where they were competing to be the official mains Reddit. In that case, I gave it to whichever one had the higher count. Moving on, we have the next metric, which is the total number of members in each Discord server for each character. Now, there is one kind of glaring problem with this. It's only an issue for one character, and that is the Kaching's main Discord. The reason for that is because it's the Discord for the Kaching's main website, also known as KQM, which, if you didn't know, is basically the go-to place for theory crafting in Genshin Impact. There are other hubs that people go to, but this was the first and is arguably the largest. So that leaves its member count being just a little bit inflated compared to everyone else's, being almost twice as much as Raiden's, which is in second place. So she gets a little bit of a leg up in this, but it's okay. It's just one character. Everyone else's is pretty normal. Now, just like with the Reddit category, there were some issues where there were dueling Discords, sometimes multiple, like 3 that I could find just within the X mains Reddit. For the most part, many of them had a direct link from the Reddit to a Discord for that Reddit. And in that case, I went with that number most of the time, unless the number was suspiciously low, like Deluxe, which in that case, I took to Google to find what is probably the real one, the one that had the bigger count. For the next metric, I decided to use something a little bit more official, which I took to the official Genshin Impact YouTube channel and used each character's demo and collected miscellany and added those 2 numbers up to give them a number totaling views. This one does have some problems, but I really wanted to include something that was a little bit more official. Now, the big problem here is that there are 11 characters that just don't even have one. In those cases, I tried to find something that was similar to them, and a couple characters did have one. Like I gave some to Amber, even though she technically doesn't have any. And in the case where they had nothing, they're just all tied for last place, which for some of them is a benefit because that means they're not actually dead last. Their number is a little bit lower than it would have been otherwise. But even though someone like Diluc doesn't actually have a demo, he does have a collected miscellany that does have a pretty decent amount of views, so I decided to include stuff like that. For the fourth metric, it is something that is also somewhat official, and that is I went to the official Genshin Discord and typed in characters' names into the search bar. The goal here is to see how many times their names have been mentioned. Despite having actually used this metric, it does have some issues. For example, some characters have nicknames that people use. A lot of people may refer to Bennett as Benny. I, for one, very commonly shorten Xingqiu to XQ or Xiangling to XL. A lot of people may also refer to Yoimiya as just Yoi. For the most part, I found these to be pretty low impact. For example, some characters like Ayaka have a full name of Kamisato Ayaka, but when you search for Ayaka, both come up regardless, so that doesn't impact her search results. What I was more concerned with was people messing up a character's name outright. For example, not adding the space in between Yunjin, which in that case, I searched both and then added them up to be fair. Or in some rare cases, people putting an apostrophe in between Al Haytham. If there was a way for people to commonly misspell a character's name that I was aware of, I searched it up and then added it up so it would be fair. Luckily, in most cases, it wasn't actually that big, but it does happen. There is another issue with some characters having pretty common names, like Jean, where some people may have just been talking about Jeans the clothing, or perhaps they're talking about Jean from Fire Emblem. It's my belief that that isn't going to heavily impact the results that much and really just not be that big of a deal, leaving this to be still a pretty good metric of popularity. And finally, the fifth and final metric I used was simply Google search results. What I did here is I go to a Google search bar and type in the character's name followed by Genshin Impact to limit it as much as possible, and then take the number that Google shows you under it, and just there, that's as simple as that. That's it. The keyword of adding Genshin Impact to this is very important because if I search just a generic name like Jean, of course you're going to get way more results than you would if you were just searching for Genshin Impact, so you got to add that extra little bit onto it. Compare that to a character like Diluc, where you can just search Diluc's name plainly and get almost the exact same number as searching Diluc Genshin Impact. It's pretty important because there are quite a few names that have generic things like Eula, Razor, Jean, Mona. Now that I realize it gets a lot of Mondstadt characters, but in any case, this keeps it fair. Now every category gets their list ordered, then numbered up to 63, sometimes lower in case of ties, which does happen, and then they all get added up. And in the end, hopefully there only should be a couple ties because the total number will be different, even though there are ties in some categories. So the worst theoretical score a person could have is 315, and the best score they could have is just 5. So now that the long-winded explanation so people actually understand how this list was made is out of the way, we can get onto the list itself. So without further ado, here is the list from popular to least popular. I gotta say, there were a lot more ties than I would have expected there to be, but given that I took a lot of these data points like several weeks ago, I can't exactly tie break them even though there are ways that I could. Many of you probably noticed that newer characters tended to be near the later half, especially the 4 stars. That is to be expected though. Characters who have been in the game for a longer time have had longer time to gain fans. They've also had longer time to be discussed, be obtained by people, and that does contribute massively to their popularity. After all, this isn't exactly a list of how many people favorite a character. I thought it was pretty cool how high Fischl was for a 4-star, being the highest in the entire list, and Ganyu being number 3. I'm actually very curious to see just how different it'll be if it's based off of who is people's favorites that they can just vote on rather than their actions. So down below, you'll find a form in both the pinned comment and the description where you can vote on your favorite and least favorite character. So thank you to my members and patrons, thank you to you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Attaboy!